His life was shattered by betrayal from those he trusted most. Alex thought he knew everything about his wife, Emily, but uncovering a conspiracy placed him in mortal danger. Powerful figures, blackmail, and a dangerous game of survival revealed a darker truth. The person he cherished most might be at the center of it all. Can Alex expose the enemies pulling the strings and uncover the shocking secrets before he loses everything, including himself? The game has only just begun. The betrayal that shattered everything. How one man found himself at the heart of a conspiracy where no one could be trusted, not even the closest ones. When Alex entered the house, he immediately felt that something was wrong. His wife, Emily, always left the hallway light on when she was waiting for him to return from work. But this time, the house was plunged into darkness, and only a faint glow emanated from the kitchen. He slowly took off his coat, listening to every sound. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfume, clearly not Emily's. Something inside him tightened. "Emily?" he called, trying to hide the alarm in his voice. There was no response. But the silence wasn't absolute. Muffled sounds, like whispers and faint laughter, drifted down from the second floor. Alex climbed the stairs, stepping as quietly as he could. His heart pounded loudly in his chest, each step bringing him closer to something he feared more than anything. The bedroom door was ajar. Warm light spilled through, and through the crack, he saw a blurred silhouette. Two shadows. "What the?" he whispered, freezing in place. Instead of bursting into the room, Alex decided to gather evidence first. He turned on the voice recorder on his phone and took a step forward, pushing the door open wider. Emily stood next to a tall man in an expensive suit. Her hand rested on his shoulder, and her eyes shone with a spark Alex hadn't seen in a long time. "Alex?" she exclaimed, noticing him. Her voice was filled with surprise and panic, but more than anything, fear. The man beside her stepped back as if ready to flee. But before Alex could utter a word, Emily did something unexpected. She approached Alex, grabbed the phone from his hand, and with one swift motion, tossed it out the window. "Let's talk," she said, looking him straight in the eye. Her calmness was so strange and unsettling that Alex froze, unsure how to react. "Okay, Alex, listen to me." Emily's voice trembled slightly, but there was steel in it. "You think you understand what's going on right now, but you don't even know half the truth." She looked away, and Alex noticed her fingers nervously clutching the edge of her dress. The uncertainty, something he had never seen in her before, made her seem like a stranger. "Then explain," he said, clenching his fists to keep from losing control. "Explain why you were standing here with him. Who the hell is he, anyway?" The man, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His face was calm, but his eyes held something like a challenge. "I'm Travis," he said. "We probably should have met earlier." "Travis?" Alex stared at him with undisguised fury. "And what are you doing here?" Emily raised her hand as if to calm him, but the gesture only fueled his anger. "Wait, I'll explain everything." She took a step toward Alex. Her voice softened, almost pleading. "It's not what you think." "Oh, so it's not the cliché situation where a wife cheats on her husband with another man?" His voice dripped with bitter irony. Emily averted her eyes and sighed heavily. "It's more complicated. Much more complicated." Alex crossed his arms over his chest, his gaze full of distrust. "Talk, Emily, or I'm leaving." Emily nervously licked her lips before speaking. 2 years ago, when you were on a business trip, some people came to me. They said her voice faltered, that you owed them money. A lot of money. Alex froze. "What?" he whispered, unable to believe his ears. "I've never borrowed money from anyone." Emily nodded, but tears began streaming down her cheeks. "I know, but it wasn't true. They were blackmailing me, Alex. They said that if I didn't cooperate with them, they would find you and do something terrible." Alex silently stared at her, his mind refusing to accept her words. "And what did you do?" he asked, his voice devoid of anger now. Only coldness remained. Emily glanced at Travis, and he nodded. "I agreed, but it's not what you think." Her voice broke. "They wanted me to pass information to them. Information about you, about your company. What? Alex stepped back as if struck. At first, it was just small things, Emily continued. Your work schedules, financial reports. But then, they wanted more. And I couldn't refuse. And that's where he comes in? Alex pointed at Travis. Travis smiled. A smile that looked more like a mask. I'm here to ensure Emily keeps her promises, he said. Alex looked at his wife, his face as pale as a sheet. You work for him? No. Emily burst out. I work for you, Alex. This whole time, I've been trying to protect you. Protect me? He let out a short, cold laugh. You betrayed me. You lied to me. Emily dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I did it for us. For you. Alex stood there, looking at her, unable to think clearly. Travis stepped forward. I think everything is clear now, he said, calmly adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. Now that it's all out in the open, it's time to make a decision. What do you mean? Alex turned his gaze to him. Travis smiled. Either you work with us, Alex, or your life falls apart right here and now. A tense silence filled the room. Alex felt the air grow heavy as Emily's and Travis's gazes pierced him like knives. He knew that at this moment, any wrong move or word could destroy everything he was planning. He lifted his eyes and looked at Emily. Her face, once painfully familiar, was now a mask of fear and uncertainty. She looked at him as though afraid to see something irreversible in his eyes. Fine, he said, stepping forward. His voice was cold and firm. If I have to work with you, let's start now. Travis smiled with satisfaction, as if he had expected this all along. A wise decision, Alex, he said, casually adjusting his cuffs. It shows you're capable of thinking strategically. Alex forced himself not to show any emotion. Anger and betrayal churned within him, but he couldn't let them take over. If he wanted to expose them and regain control of the situation, he would have to play by their rules, at least for now. Emily stepped closer, her eyes brimming with tears. Alex, Shut up, he interrupted sharply. You've lost the right to explain anything to me. Her face froze, and she stepped back. Excellent, Travis interjected, nodding. Now that's settled, I'll explain what you'll need to do. First, I want to know everything, Alex said, his voice steady. If I'm going to work for you, I need to understand what I'm getting into. Travis paused for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But remember, every step, every decision has its consequences. He gestured for Alex to sit and began outlining the details. Alex listened, carefully committing every word, every detail to memory. He needed this information for his plan. When Travis finished, he looked at Alex and said, Now it's all up to you. Show us that you're on our side, and we'll ensure your life stays safe. Alex raised his eyes to meet his. I'm on your side, he said coldly. At that moment, he felt a part of himself die. Later that night, Alex sat in his car parked on the outskirts of the city. His hands trembled as he dialed a phone number. You're going to have to help me, he said when the voice on the other end answered. Alex? What happened? Asked a man, his voice filled with concern. Not now. Just listen. I want to expose them. But if anything goes wrong, they'll destroy me. Who are they? It's a long story, but I need your support. The following weeks were a test for Alex. He worked with Travis, handing over minor details that seemed insignificant but were enough to build trust. At the same time, he gathered information that would allow him to strike at them when it hurt the most. Emily tried to talk to him, but every attempt ended in failure. He couldn't even look at her without feeling the searing pain of betrayal. One day, she entered his office while he was working. Alex, I know you hate me, she began. You have no idea how much, he replied without looking up. But I want to help you. He raised his eyes and stared at her as if trying to pierce through her with his gaze. Help? You? You've already helped me enough. Emily sighed and placed her hand on the desk. You don't understand. I did it because I was forced to. And you think that excuses you? She remained silent. Get out, he said after a long pause. I don't want to see you. A few days later, Travis invited Alex to a meeting. They sat in a restaurant as Travis handed him some documents. This is your first big assignment, he said. Show us what you can do. Alex opened the folder and saw something that made his breath catch. This is impossible, he said, staring at the text. It's possible, Travis replied. Just do what we tell you, and everything will be fine. Alex closed the folder and looked up. Fine, he said, concealing the storm of emotions within. But inside, he already knew this was his chance. Alex sat in his car by the coastline, holding the documents Travis had given him at the meeting. The small folder felt heavy, as if it contained not just information but the weight of his future. The sound of waves crashing in the quiet reminded him that every action he took now was like walking a tightrope over a chasm. He opened the folder and saw several sheets detailing information about his own company. Contracts, bank statements, confidential correspondence with partners. Some of these documents he had seen before, but most appeared fabricated, a masterful forgery that could ruin his reputation. Among the papers was a letter allegedly confirming his involvement in money laundering. Damn it, Alex whispered, throwing the papers onto the passenger seat. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Deep down, he knew this was a trap. But how far had this game gone? Suddenly, his phone rang. An unlisted number appeared on the screen. He hesitated for a few seconds, but then pressed answer. Alex, a familiar voice said. It was Emily. What do you want? He asked coldly. I know you have the documents, she said. Her voice was anxious but resolute. I want to help you. Help, he replied sarcastically. How will you help, Emily? Sell me out to them again? Alex, it's not what you think. Her voice cracked. I know I made a mistake, but I can give you what you're looking for. And what's that? He was ready to hang up, but her next words made him freeze. I have a copy of their black ledger, and it can destroy them, she said. An hour later, Alex was sitting in a small cafe, waiting for Emily. He hated himself for agreeing to meet her, but if what she said was true, it could change everything. When she walked in, he barely recognized her. She looked tired, worn out, as if the past few days had been hell for her. Here, she said, placing a flash drive on the table. It's all there. What is this? Alex shot her a distrustful look. It's their records. Travis and his people are laundering money through offshore accounts. These documents prove that they're using your company as a front. Alex picked up the flash drive, but didn't rush to check its contents. Why are you doing this? He asked after a long pause. Because I want to make things right, she replied. I know I betrayed you, but I can't stand by and watch them destroy you. He wanted to respond, but at that moment, Travis entered the cafe. Alex froze, his fingers instinctively clutching the flash drive in his pocket. Travis, as always, looked confident. He approached their table and sat down beside Emily without asking for permission. How sweet, he said, looking at them both. A family reunion. Alex forced himself to appear calm. What do you want? Travis leaned in closer, his gaze cold and sharp. I want to make sure you're keeping up your end of the deal, Alex. Because if you're not, he glanced at Emily, it'll be hard for your wife. Don't you dare touch her, Alex replied, but his voice betrayed a slight tremor. That depends on you, Travis said calmly. Just do your job. After the meeting, Alex knew his time was running out. He went home, inserted the flash drive into his computer, and began examining its contents. The data Emily provided was damning. But how could he use it without exposing himself? He made a few calls to old contacts in the legal field, trying to figure out how to submit the information to the authorities without revealing his involvement. That night, he sat on the terrace for a long time, staring into the darkness. Emily approached him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. What are you going to do now? She asked. What am I going to do? Alex looked at her with a bitter smile. I'm going to destroy them. Her eyes filled with fear. But it's dangerous. Did you think about that when you dragged me into this mess? His words were sharp as a blade. She didn't respond. You have one chance to prove you're not on their side anymore, he said, leaning closer. Either you help me destroy them, or I'll leave you to face this hell on your own. Emily nodded, her hands trembling. The next day, Alex met with his old friend John, who worked for the FBI. Alex, Are you sure you want to get involved in this? John asked after seeing the flash drive. I don't have a choice, Alex replied. It's the only way to get my life back. John was silent for a long time before nodding. All right, we'll do it. But you need to be ready for the consequences. Alex looked at him with cold determination. I'm ready. Alex stood outside the building where his old friend John worked with the FBI. The cold wind stung his face, but it couldn't extinguish the fire of determination burning inside him. He held the flash drive in his hand, the key to destroying Travis and his entire organization. But at the same time, it was a ticket to danger with no way out. It's not too late to change your mind, John said as Alex walked into his office. Change my mind? Alex smirked bitterly. I've been through hell. Now it's time for them to feel the same. He handed the flash drive to John, who studied it carefully, as if weighing its significance in his hands. If this is really what you say it is, John said, it could change everything. But you need to understand, Travis won't forgive you for this. I know, Alex replied, and I'm ready. For the next few days, Alex lived on edge, like sitting on a powder keg. He knew Travis would find out. It was only a matter of time. But he didn't expect it to happen so soon. The phone rang in the middle of the night. Emily's number flashed on the screen. What happened? He asked as soon as he answered. Alex. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. They know. What? How? Someone tipped them off, she said, her voice trembling. They're coming for you. What did you do, Emily? He demanded, his voice filled with anger and despair. I didn't do anything, she screamed. I just overheard Travis telling his men. Suddenly, a loud noise came through the line, and the call was disconnected. Emily? Emily! Alex shouted, but the line was dead. He rushed to his car, not knowing if Emily was still alive, but fully aware that his own life was now hanging by a thread. On his way to their house, Alex constantly glanced over his shoulder, feeling like he was being followed. When he arrived, the front door was ajar. Emily, he called as he stepped inside. The house was eerily silent. Only the light in the bedroom was on. He climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. On the bed lay a note. You made your choice, Alex. Now he will make his. Suddenly, someone struck him from behind, and everything went black. When Alex regained consciousness, he was tied to a chair. In front of him stood Travis, his face no longer friendly. Well, hero, how does it feel to be in our shoes? Travis asked with a smirk. What do you want? Alex croaked. It's simple. Travis leaned in closer. I want you to take back your flash drive and destroy everything. And if I refuse? Travis nodded, and Emily was brought out from behind him. Her hands were bound, and tear streaks marked her face. Then she'll be your punishment, Travis said. No. Alex shouted, struggling against his restraints. Then make your choice, Travis said coldly. Once again, Alex found himself in a situation where every move could cost a life. But this time, he decided to play by his own rules. Fine, he said. I'll do what you want. Travis smiled in satisfaction. A wise choice. But Alex already knew what he was going to do. Alex sat in a dimly lit room that felt more like a warehouse. His hands were tightly bound, and every muscle ached from the blows he had endured. Travis and his men stood nearby, whispering to each other. Only Emily sat silently in the corner, her face pale, her eyes empty. In Alex's pocket, something lightly pressed against his thigh. A miniature phone he had hidden in the lining of his jeans. His last lifeline. Alex knew he had to act quickly but with utmost caution. One wrong move, and it would all be over. Not just for him but for Emily too. Alex, Travis's voice broke the silence. I hope you've realized by now that playing games with me is a mistake. Travis stepped closer, holding the flash drive in his hand. Do you realize that this little thing could destroy everything we've worked on for years? Travis asked, holding up the flash drive. Alex lifted his head and stared directly into his eyes. And do you realize that even without that flash drive, you've already lost? Travis smiled, but a shadow of anger flickered in his gaze. I see you haven't lost your nerve, but it won't change your situation. Travis gestured to his men, and two of them dragged Emily over, forcing her to kneel in front of Alex. "Now you choose," Travis said. "Play by our rules, or watch her suffer." Alex looked at Emily. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. "Do what you have to do." He averted his gaze, trying not to reveal his plan. His fingers slowly slid down until they touched the phone hidden in his pocket. He pressed a pre-programmed combination of buttons that would send his location to John. Now all he needed was to buy some time. "I'm ready," Alex suddenly said, his voice steady. Travis stopped and turned back to him. "Ready for what?" "Ready to do what you want. But I have one condition." "A condition?" Travis laughed. "You're not in a position to make demands. You want my cooperation? Then listen to me," Alex said, forcing himself to sound calm. "Let Emily go. She has nothing to do with this anymore." Travis hesitated, pondering. "And how can I trust you?" "You don't have a choice," Alex replied. "If she stays here, you won't get anything out of me." Travis slowly nodded. "Fine, but if you cross me, I'll find her." Alex nodded, feigning submission. As Travis's men led Emily away, Alex summoned every ounce of willpower to remain calm. He knew John had received the signal and was already on his way. "Now, let's get down to business," Travis said, sitting across from Alex. Alex listened carefully, memorizing every detail, every mistake Travis made as he revealed his plans. But his primary goal was to stall for time. Suddenly, loud sirens blared outside the warehouse. "What the hell?" one of Travis's men shouted, running to the door. Alex saw Travis's expression shift. He realized this was the end. "You," Travis began, turning toward Alex, but he didn't finish. The door burst open, and FBI agents stormed in. Travis drew his gun, but he didn't even have time to aim. John and his team swiftly subdued him and the rest of his men. When it was over, Alex stood outside, watching as Travis was loaded into a car. "That was risky," John said, walking up to him. "I knew you wouldn't let me down," Alex replied, but there was no joy in his voice. He knew this wasn't over. Alex sat in a small FBI conference room. In front of him were documents that could prove his innocence, but they weren't enough to fully untangle the mess. The room was silent, but his thoughts raged like a storm in a sealed jar. John's words echoed in his mind. Travis decided to cooperate. He's willing to turn over his partners. The news hit Alex like a cold shower. He couldn't understand why Travis, so confident and dangerous, had suddenly decided to give up. John entered the room with a tense expression. He tossed a folder onto the table and sat across from Alex. "He has conditions," John said with a sigh. "What conditions?" Alex leaned forward, feeling a wave of anxiety build inside him. "He wants immunity. And he wants you." Alex froze. "Me?" John nodded. "He claims you have another copy of the data that could destroy him. And if we want his information, we have to let him deal with you." Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're joking." "I wish it were a joke," John replied. "But his information could lead us to people much higher up. And you're willing to sacrifice me for that?" John met his gaze. "I'm on your side, Alex. But you have to understand, I won't be the one making the decision." Back at home, Alex felt trapped. He knew that from now on, every move he made would be watched. He couldn't trust the FBI, and Travis. Travis was a master of intrigue and manipulation. "Alex," came a voice from the kitchen. He turned to see Emily standing there, holding a cup of coffee. She looked exhausted but determined. "What are you doing here?" he asked coldly. "I knew you'd come back here," she said, lowering her eyes. "And I knew you'd need help." "Help?" Alex laughed, but there was no joy in his voice. "You want to help me? How? By betraying me again?" Emily stepped closer, setting the cup down on the table. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Alex, but I want to make things right." "How?" She lowered her head, then pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "This has information Travis doesn't want anyone to see. His personal deals, his partners, his weaknesses." Alex studied her carefully. "Where did you get this?" "He left it with me back when he still trusted me. I didn't destroy it because I was afraid I might need it someday." "And now you've decided to be a hero?" Emily looked him straight in the eye. I know nothing will ever earn back your trust, but if this helps you survive, I'm willing to take the risk. Alex took the flash drive, but his heart felt neither gratitude nor relief. He knew this was just the start of a new battle. The next day, he met with John. This might help, he said, handing over the flash drive. John reviewed the data, his expression growing tense. This is what we need, John said. But you have to understand, if Travis finds out about this, you'll be his #1 target. He already wants me, Alex replied. So why not do it the right way? That evening, Alex received a call from an unknown number. I hope you're enjoying playing the hero, Travis's voice said. But this game is over. What do you want? Alex asked coldly. You know what? And if you don't return what's mine, I'll make sure you watch everything you care about crumble. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Alex. Alex felt like time was working against him. He knew he had to act quickly before Travis made his next move. But he also understood that in this game, any ally could turn into an enemy. Alex sat at an old wooden table in his apartment. The light from the desk lamp fell on the flash drive, which seemed harmless but held the answers to questions that had haunted him for weeks. His hands trembled as he inserted it into his laptop. If this is a trap, he muttered, almost warning himself. The screen lit up, revealing folders of files. Most of the names looked technical, but one stood out, Atlas. Alex didn't know what it meant, but he sensed it held the key to everything. When he opened the file, he found documents, lists, transactions, and photographs. At first glance, they seemed like typical reports of illegal deals. But as Alex scrolled further, his heart began to race. Among the numerous documents, he stumbled upon something that made him freeze. They were photographs of people, powerful people, politicians, business leaders, even law enforcement officers. And among them, John. What the hell? Alex whispered, unable to believe his eyes. In one of the photos, John stood next to Travis. They were shaking hands, and stacks of cash lay on the table behind them. Alex felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. Are you sure this is what you need? A voice suddenly asked from behind him. Alex turned. It was Emily. Her face was tense, but her eyes glimmered with a strange resolve. What are you doing here? He asked coldly. I knew you'd find this, she said, nodding toward the screen. Knew? Alex stood abruptly. You knew John was involved in this? She looked away, and that was enough of an answer. Why didn't you tell me? Because it was dangerous, Alex. If you expose John, they'll find a way to destroy you. They already want to destroy me, he shouted, clenching his fists. Emily took a step closer. You don't understand how deep this goes. John isn't just your friend. He's a key player in this system. Alex felt his anger and despair wrestling for control. And you thought I'd just accept that? That I'd stay silent? I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Alex laughed, but there was no joy in his voice. All you've done is tear me apart. He turned back to the laptop and began saving the documents onto another flash drive. What are you doing? Emily asked, visibly nervous. If John is involved, I need to give this to another agent. Someone I can trust? Are you sure you can trust anyone? She asked. Alex hesitated. Her words made sense, but it didn't change his plan. The next day, Alex met with John at a familiar cafe where they often discussed business. You look tense, John noted as he sat down across from him. Maybe that's because my whole life is on the verge of collapsing, Alex replied, trying to keep calm. Don't worry, John said with a reassuring smile. We'll handle Travis and all these problems. Alex studied him carefully, trying to gauge if John knew he'd been exposed. What if there's more to this than just Travis? Alex asked. What do you mean? John leaned in closer. What if someone in your ranks is playing both sides? John froze for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. There are a lot of people in the FBI, Alex. But we're all here to help you. Alex nodded, pretending to believe him. When he got home, he began formulating a plan. His goal was simple. Find a way to bypass John and deliver the information to someone who could dismantle the system. But before he could finish his thoughts, there was a knock at the door. He approached and opened it. John was standing there. We need to talk, John said, his voice low and cold. About what? About what you're doing. Alex felt the tension rise. What am I doing? John stepped closer, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Don't play games with me, Alex. I know what you've found. Alex stood in the middle of his living room, watching as John casually scanned the room as if it were his own. But this wasn't a friendly visit, and the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing second. Alex felt as though the ground beneath him was becoming increasingly unstable. John, what are you doing here? He asked coldly, though he already knew the answer. John turned to him, a slight but menacing smile on his face. I'm here to give you a chance, Alex. A chance to fix this. Fix this? Alex laughed bitterly. You mean, a chance to save your criminal ass? John squinted. I'd advise you to hold your tongue. You're not exactly in a strong position. And what position am I in? Alex crossed his arms, trying to appear confident, though he was boiling inside. John slowly pulled a phone from his pocket and opened a video. The screen showed Emily. She was sitting in a dark room, her hands bound. Her face was bloodied, and panic shone in her eyes. No, Alex whispered, stepping forward. If you want her to stay alive, you'll play by our rules, John said calmly, turning off the video. You're insane, Alex said, his voice trembling. She has nothing to do with this. She became part of the game when you dragged her into it, John replied, his voice as cold as ice. Alex sat down on the couch, trying to collect his thoughts. John stood across from him like a shadow that wouldn't let him rest. What do you want me to do? Alex finally asked. It's simple, John said, sitting down beside him. You help us. You use your connections and whatever trust you have left to divert attention from us and close this case for good. And what do I get in return? Alex leaned forward, his eyes blazing with anger. Her life, John nodded toward the phone. And yours. Alex clenched his fists so tightly his nails dug into his skin. How can I trust you? John smiled. You don't have a choice. After John left, Alex remained sitting in the dark. Dozens of thoughts raced through his mind. He knew John wouldn't stop, even if Alex agreed to his terms. But what else could he do? He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. On the other end, a man's voice answered. This is Alex. I need your help, he said. Are you sure you want to get involved in this? The voice asked. I have no choice, Alex replied, staring at John's phone, which he had secretly kept after the visit. The next day, Alex met John at the designated location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Are you ready? John asked, his face a mask of complete control. I'll do whatever you want, but I want to see Emily. I need to know she's alive, Alex said. John nodded, and one of his men brought Emily in. She looked frail, but thankfully alive. Their eyes met, and Alex saw fear mixed with hope in hers. Alex, don't do this, she whispered. Shut her up, John ordered. One of the men covered her mouth, and Alex barely restrained himself from lunging at them. Now listen carefully, John continued. You're going to convince the FBI that this was your idea and hand over the forged documents. This will close the case. Alex nodded, though his heart was breaking. He knew this wasn't the end. That night, Alex sat at his computer, reviewing the real documents he had saved on another flash drive. He knew this was his only chance to destroy the system from within, but the risk was immense. Alex. Emily approached him, her voice quiet. You need to leave, he said without looking at her. What? Leave. If something goes wrong, I don't want you here. I'm not leaving you, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You already did, he replied, looking up at her. And now this is my game. Emily froze for a moment, but then left the room, leaving him alone in the darkness. The next morning, Alex walked into the FBI building, holding 2 flash drives. One for them, and one for his final move. This is everything I have, he said to an agent, handing over the forged data. But at that moment, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. You think this is the end? It's just the beginning. Alex stood in his apartment, surrounded by tense chaos. On the table lay the flash drive, his phone, and a few printed documents he had managed to retrieve at the last minute. But these were just fragments of a puzzle that increasingly felt endless. He thought he had dealt with Travis and his organization, but the anonymous message had cast doubt on everything. You think this is the end? It's just the beginning. He read it dozens of times, searching for a hidden meaning, but no answers came. Who could have sent it? And why now? The sound of a ringing phone pulled him out of his thoughts. John's number flashed on the screen. What do you want? Alex snapped. We need to meet, John said coldly. It's urgent. Another one of your warnings? Just be at the cafe on 5th at 10. And don't try to make a scene. The call ended, leaving Alex with anger and doubt. At 10 o'clock, he walked into a small, nearly empty cafe. John was already waiting in a corner, calmly sipping coffee. You're late, John said, nodding to the empty chair across from him. You have 1 minute to explain why I'm here, Alex replied, sitting down. John leaned forward. There's a new player, he said quietly. What does that mean? You thought Travis was the top, but he's just a pawn. The real people behind this don't even know you exist. But now, they're starting to pay attention. Who are these people? That's what we're trying to figure out, John replied. We. Alex smiled bitterly. Do you seriously think that after everything, I'm going to trust you? You have no choice, Alex. If they decide you're a threat, you won't survive. As Alex left the cafe, he felt his fear slowly transforming into anger. John was trying to control him again, but this time, Alex intended to play by his own rules. When he got home, he turned on his laptop. On the flash drive he had hidden from John, there were still a few folders he hadn't had the chance to review. Opening one of them, Alex froze. The documents detailed a global financial scheme involving international corporations, governments, and, most disturbingly, law enforcement agencies. Among the signatures on the documents, he spotted a familiar name, Jonathan Reeves. Damn it, Alex whispered. John wasn't just part of the scheme. He was a key figure. Suddenly, his phone rang again. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Who is this? Alex asked, answering the call. I'm the person who can help you stay alive, a calm male voice replied. Why should I trust you? You already know that John deceived you. And you know this game is bigger than you imagined. Alex stayed silent, trying to figure out who was behind the voice. I know you have a flash drive with information that could bring down the entire system. But if you make the wrong move, it'll cost not just your life but the lives of everyone you care about. What are you offering? We'll meet. I'll give you the answers you're looking for. He didn't know why he agreed. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was desperation. But at midnight, Alex stood outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The man who approached him looked calm, but his eyes were filled with weariness and experience. Alex, he said, extending a hand. I'm Michael, and I'm here to help you. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't, Michael replied. But if you want to survive, you'll have to take the risk. They went inside, and Michael showed him another set of documents. This proves that John isn't just working for Travis. He's playing both sides. But there's something else you need to know. Michael pulled out a photograph. Emily was in it. What is this? Alex asked, his jaw tightening. She's not who she seems. She's been working for them all along. Alex felt his heart clench. You're lying. You can check for yourself. But if you want this to end, you need to decide whose side you're on. Alex stood in the dimly lit room, going through the documents Michael had given him earlier. Each page revealed more details that seemed impossible to comprehend. What he had thought of as Travis being the ultimate villain now looked like just the tip of the iceberg. This conspiracy ran much deeper. John was a key player, and Emily. Alex pushed the thoughts of her aside. Could he trust a single word she had said? His phone rang. John's number flashed on the screen. Alex hesitated. He didn't want to hear his voice, but he needed answers. What do you want? Alex asked coldly as he answered. We need to meet, John said. You've used that trick before, Alex replied. Why should I trust you? Because if you don't, you'll lose everything, John replied, his voice unervingly calm. This is your last chance. The call ended, leaving Alex staring at his shattered phone screen and a mountain of questions. An hour later, Alex was sitting in his car, parked outside an old warehouse. His hand trembled as he retrieved a gun from the glove compartment. He hated the weapon, but he knew it might be necessary. The warehouse doors were slightly ajar. Inside, in the center of the room, stood John and Travis. "Well, here he is, our hero," Travis said, grinning widely. "What is this?" Alex stopped a few steps away. "John, are you going to explain this to me?" "It's simple," John replied. "We've decided it's time to put an end to this." "Put an end to what?" "To your attempts to destroy the system," Travis said. "Did you really think you could beat us?" "I thought I could at least try," Alex replied, clenching his fists. "And you did," John said. "But you don't even realize how far this goes." John stepped closer, his eyes cold. "Alex, Travis and I discussed this. You can become a part of this, but only if you stop trying to bring us down." "Part of what?" Alex asked, his voice filled with anger. "Part of the network," Travis replied. "Money, power, freedom. All of it could be yours." Alex laughed, but there was no joy in his voice. "You think I'd sell my soul for your filth?" "You don't have a choice," John said. "If you don't join us, you'll be destroyed." Alex took a step back, trying to buy time. "And what about Emily?" he asked, trying to gauge their intentions. "She's been with us all along," Travis said with a faint smirk. "But we understand that was hard for you to hear." "Where is she now?" Alex asked, his voice calm, though a storm raged within. "Safe," John replied. "But that could change." "You're blackmailing me?" Alex felt his anger boiling over. "We're giving you a chance to choose," Travis replied. Alex knew this was a trap, but he already had a plan. His second flash drive contained data that could expose everything. If he walked away now, he'd lose the chance to use it. "Fine," he said finally. "I agree." Travis and John exchanged glances. "Smart choice," John said. Alex stepped closer, extending his hand as if to shake. But as John and Travis let their guard down, Alex pulled out the gun and aimed it at John. "Make one move, and it'll be your last mistake," Alex said. Travis laughed. "You think you can control this situation?" At that moment, the warehouse doors burst open, and FBI agents stormed in, led by Michael. "Nobody move," Michael shouted. John and Travis raised their hands, but their faces remained composed. "You've made a mistake, Alex," John said. "This isn't over." Alex stood in the corner, watching as they were escorted out. His fight had finally yielded results, but he knew this victory was only partial. After the agents cleared out, Michael approached him. "That was risky," Michael said. "It was necessary," Alex replied. He returned home, where Emily was waiting for him. "Alex," she began, but he stopped her with a gesture. "We're done," he said without even looking at her. She left silently, leaving him alone in the darkness. Alex sat down, lit a cigarette, and looked at his hands. They no longer trembled. He had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. Could you have predicted who the real enemy would be? What do you think lies ahead for Alex?